Deep Cover is a comedy in the vein of multiple fish out of water classics, but is it funny enough to join the ranks of the greats? I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Deep Cover reads, three improv actors are asked to go undercover by the police in London's criminal underworld. All right, so this one is, I think, in the tradition of Condor Man, The Three Amigos, Galaxy Quest, and The Man Who Knew Too Little. So fish out of water comedy about bumbling people immersed in a world they only know from fiction at best, pretending, role-playing or acting, whatever the case may be, pretending to be heroic while actually wildly incapable, and constantly bluffing their way through horrible situations by the skin of their teeth. It's not a geek premise or setting. This is like very much on the line of like, okay, I talk about geek genre entertainment. This isn't quite that, but it has, I think, a ton of geek appeal, as geeks often imagine placing themselves in imaginative scenarios, and any geek who has played in a tabletop role-playing campaign trying to improvise awesome moments that comedically don't work out because of bad dice rolls is going to be able to relate to that kind of dynamic, that kind of humor that just naturally generates in this kind of story. The focus on characters, the overall tone and how they manage that, and the internal logic. These three things were really vital to Deep Cover being funny to me, which it was. Kat is played by Bryce Dallas Howard, and she's a struggling American actor who's been living in London for 10 plus years. She's about to lose her work visa. She takes this undercover job, which seems pretty simple at the start, because it's her chance at staying. Marlon, who is one of the actors in her improv class that she teaches, Marlon's played by Orlando Bloom, and he is an arguably psychotically obsessive method actor who really wants to have serious, gritty roles, but he doesn't ever get them. And this is his chance to prove to himself that he's got it in himself. Hugh, who is played by Nick Mohammed, I most know him from Ted Lasso. He just joined the improv class to help build his social skills and his self-confidence, and he sees this opportunity as kind of make or break for his personal life, kind of likewise, I think, to kind of prove a little something to himself. Well, it starts out pretty simple, but everything goes south, and then things become genuinely dangerous. So at this point, all their motivations get tested. And that's where it could break down for me if they don't figure out a way to justify why would they continue staying in these horribly dangerous situations. But their motivations are kind of updated in real time with their changing circumstances, and so I always felt they each had just enough reasonable motivation for a comedy to stay in the chaos so that I could at least just kind of shrug and keep enjoying the ride. The humor is heavily based on their personality types. Kat is improvising to try and keep things from getting out of hand. You know, she's the instructor, so she's trying to keep things to be somewhat reasonable in what they are trying to pull off and what lies they are trying to portray. And she's the one that's trying to make the best of things when they go south. Well, Marlon is psychotically dedicated to his craft to the point of unnecessarily complicating and escalating numerous situations. And Hugh is he's the poor stand-in for us as audience members. He sucks at improv, and he makes things worse with the stuttering, random things he manages to come up with and say. And yet the jokes, even though they were very consistent with who these characters were, knowing who they were didn't make the jokes feel predictable or expected to me. I think a lot of that had to do with the snappy pacing and editing that created some off-the-wall shocks that had me laughing more than I have at a comedy in a while. And the R rating had also allowed for some of the surprises to be brutally violent jolts of dark humor. The premise and situations continued to get mixed up enough that things stayed surprisingly fresh until the end. I thought maybe it was running out of juice when they were setting up the premise for the climax, but then I was like, oh no, it's got some more fun and some more humor left in it. And when the credits rolled, I found that I also cared about these characters and where they ended up. And as far as the cast goes, Bryce Dallas Howard, I thought she was great as the leader of the trio and the one working hardest to uncomplicate things. She was vital in a subtle way to creating the sense of tension and danger in situations that also made the jokes that much funnier. You have to have a real feeling of tension for me for this type of humor to work. If I don't feel like they are actually in danger, then the outlandish things that they end up doing and saying as they try to navigate the situation, they wouldn't have the same amount of humor. But Bryce Dallas Howard was a large part, one of the two of these three, that really kept a sense of tension just in her eyes, in how she was trying to keep a poker face, all that kind of stuff, really made not just what she said funnier, but it made the situations in general in each scene funnier. So she was very vital, but in a surprisingly subtle way. Orlando Bloom seemed to, like, genuinely, as an actor, play this character a lot of times the same way he would play like a really legitimately gritty actor if he was in a stone cold serious crime drama, and that was important for his humor to work. It wasn't overplayed, it wasn't overdone. It was so weighty and grounded that it made it all the more ridiculous, the kinds of things that he would say and do, and the way that would escalate situations. The fact that his character also almost never breaks character created some of the funniest absurdity in the movie. And then Nick Mohammed completely endeared me to him with his constant sense of nervousness and his terrible attempts at hiding his discomfort. The fear in his eyes at some of the insane things that he had to do was as funny as any written punchline in the movie. So I just love comedies that cast strong actors that are playing just as vital a part as the punchlines that are verbally coming out of their mouths. All right, so stunts, visuals. Well, this one's pretty grounded, and the visual effects are sparing and too brief and fast, I think, to be picked apart too much, and I think that was really important. Again, it needs to feel grounded for me, for this type of humor to work. If the situation feels fake, the danger feels fake, and then the humor doesn't work because it's not playing against tension. But the locations, the wardrobe, the very subtle visual effects when they use them, I thought all served the tone really well. All right, themes, anything of moral, philosophical, spiritual significance to think about or talk about in this one? No, this is not a movie with a moral or political messaging checkbox agenda any more than the other movies, the other comedies that I mentioned earlier. It's just a funny, fish-out-of-water comedy that I think has some nice geek appeal. All right, no idea what your tastes are in movies, comedies, even trickier, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Spader, watch this one. You and your wife are going to watch it together. You're going to laugh together. And since there didn't end up being any nudity or prolonged sexual content, it's one you'll probably want to have fun watching again with your boys. I don't know if it's quite funny or novel enough to be listed with those other classics someday, but it was definitely worth your time. This one's rated R for violent content, language throughout, and drug use. And those are all of my thoughts for now on Deep Cover. Right now, I would like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. That's terribly. Just the whole sense of rhythm there, it's terrible. It's not catchy at all. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate Dan, Axel, Gabriel, Stinson, Nolan, D. Branham, Winston, Crutchfield, Libre, Joel Nelson, Jake Berry, John Wilkerson, and Daryl Now. Thank you for supporting me and SBP and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name and song? Check out our page on Patreon. All right. It's tough. It's tough doing that every month. Got to come up with something different. Got to experiment sometimes. I didn't like any of that any more than you did. So thank you, and I'm sorry. I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I do want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining at patreon.com/Spirit Blade Productions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.